right, so let's talk about hybrid logistics. So here we have, am I sharing screen? Yeah. The purpose of the Uberizing hybrid logistics project was really because schedules went so wonky, and you now have AB days, AB weeks, scheduled starts that are staggered for a lot of schools and districts. And we realized calendaring was really needing to be layered. This education K-12 is a market, and higher ed is the same, that needs layered calendars. And the only thing that was available commercially was like your single calendar. You can use Calendly, but the only block you can put on it is the time that you work in the day in your time zone, not a block for I will only take meetings for English class that I teach in this window, or for parents, I'll only take it in this window. PD can only go in this window, and those kinds of things. So blocks that are defined as open time available only for certain kinds of meetings, that didn't exist in the market. So that was the first thing that EduJedi talked about. It's like, managing calendars is mind-bogglingly difficult, and what's commercially available in the market is so built for brick and mortar. It doesn't work in the hybrid world. So we went into going, okay, how are we going to do this? We couldn't get anyone else to do it. So Learning Council stepped in with the EduJedi long series of meetings to actually do this ourselves, which we're doing at no cost to anyone right now. But the other thing they found out was that, and this is true for 90% of the districts out there, pacing guides and the automation of the curriculum map is also very behind the times. So a curriculum map is essentially like, when you're supposed to teach what, when, and sometimes, like Nicole was just saying, there is some top-down, use this resource, but not always. It's normally, a pacing guide is normally a set of PDFs available in an administration site or inside the LMS that basically says, in these 6 weeks, teach these 3 standards for 5th grade English or whatever. And so the teacher has to go look at those, which are disembodied out here in the PDF or spreadsheet world. Maybe they're documents inside your LMS, but they're not really spread against the calendar. So you can look at that calendar layered on top of the calendar of when your time blocks are to teach what, as well as the ability to pop up and build the lesson that goes directly to that time slot. That doesn't exist in the market. So it's very wonky. And that means you have teachers looking in several different places just to craft one thing. And that shouldn't happen. Like, here we are in the age of technology. Why are we doing it that way? We also had attention on how much teachers could actually really give students personalized attention, whether online or in class. Even when we were in class full time, that wasn't always really done, direct instruction, except teachers walking around during study time. So the real personalization and the way it's defined in the greater markets right now is it's just built for you. It's just for you on your issues. And that could be done. We could do a lot better job with technology on that. And then minimizing teacher time spent on class manager. We look at the structure of education right now. It's built so that it's like that manufacturing line we talked about yesterday. So then a teacher is not just teaching, they're managing all of the oversight of the class discipline, the management of the class, the body of students from other dimensions than just here, learn this. So the problems that needed to be being addressed, and I want everybody to just sort of think about this, is logistics and education have a lot of things that need to be addressed. So one of them is that traditional school attrition to alternatives and the heightened complexity and the shift to digital has really bounced a lot of students out. Like, they've gone to alternatives, and that percentage is over 33% now, and it's continuing to grow, and it's a real threat. And we try to sort of obfuscate that, and the feds haven't put out numbers for a really long time, and there's a reason for that, right? This is scary. And there's also that non-automation of the master schedules and pacing guides. Then there's this lack of authentic personalization, lack of workflow, number 4. And number 5, despite adhering to the importance of human teachers, because every district and every teacher and every administrator will tell you this, teachers are the most important thing in the universe. the social dynamics in the traditional construct of schooling already had been failing many, many students. That's why we had to have bullying initiatives. That's why we had to do so many other discipline things. It was wild, right? So there's a need to actually create a function that would allow a transition of structure. It doesn't have to, but a transition of structure to fully 100% personalized pathways. So the history of this from the Learning Council and the EduJedi was, we had several years worth of special reports that came out talking about what the future would look like, including in 2019, if you had been there, in quite a few cities, we're playing a game about how structure could change. And everybody got roles, and they got to be students or teachers or administrators or personalizers and all kinds of things. And it really opened up minds. And then the pandemic happened. So that's when the EduJedi and Learning Council went into overdrive to actually figure out what would need to be this new hybrid logistics infrastructure, what that would look like. And we stumbled upon the word Uberization, but lawyers told us don't use that word too much because, it confuses people and it confuses patenting. So we started with these points. How can we, and Nicole, you'll be really aware of this, how can we confront the reality that millions of digital knowledge pieces will continually change? So like a teacher builds a lesson plan and then the link breaks and they have to use something else, or the video is no longer available or outlawed. The platform's not available. So, and the companies providing the software, like we all get Microsoft updates every week practically. Everyone providing these thousands of pieces of software to your school district could break the integrations or break the links at any time. So because they're constantly iterating and updating, and a new language, Drupal something version is no longer supported. We're going to have to go to a new version or a totally new language. So that's going to always happen. So that changing sea of software will always be there. It's a huge inefficiency that has to be confronted. So how to help create flexible online learning without giving up human teaching? That's number one. Like the real fight against online learning for so many years was, I don't want to be, marginalized as a human teacher. You're not going to bring technology into my classroom. No way. So how to make sure that is better understood, that technology should do something for you as a teacher and a learner, and it shouldn't marginalize you. It should actually elevate to precision the human intersection. And then how to use the existing school human resources and maintain some whole group and small group togetherness, allowing for that slow mutation maybe to a new form that's 100% individualized pathway. How do we keep public education relevant? How do we make it so amazing that no one wants to walk away and they're continuing to want to pay taxes for it? So how do we not also marginalize all your existing framework? So Virginia Beach has been saying they have 2 LMSs in play. I think it's Schoology and Seesaw, and they probably have a lot of courseware also in play, and then all these individual things. So they want to continue to use them. They've spent years now, probably, or it seems like years, introducing people to how to use them. They put a lot of stuff in them, and they don't want to switch. Like, that's great. I mean, switching from one LMS to another is insane. It's a lot of work. Sometimes you have to do it, but people want to use what they already have. And then how do we make room for all file forms of digital and live knowledge delivery, but provide those normalized paths alongside standards, premium pacing guides, premium lessons that can be selected, mix and match? How do we do that? That's what I just said there. I want you to get a picture in your mind of the complexity of the things that go into just one lesson that a teacher delivers. There's all this stuff going on in order to do that. And then how do you leap over questions of public, private, or homeschool by creating an ecosystem? Allow a simple way to empower those individual students. So let's start thinking like, I'm a student, I'm a consumer of learning. I can choose anything, but how do I get like interested in going over here and aligning myself with this particular physical institution that is it's living in the virtual sphere as well. In other words, how do we envelope public education with a conception of broad consumer choice that's owned by that individual student? That's already happening. We've seen this happening with a lot of districts where it's like, these people wanted to homeschool, but we're going to also offer them to be on the football team and come in for their art classes and their hands-on science labs. They're sort of partially affiliated with us. We can count them sort of partially, but the rest of the time they're homeschooling. So that's okay with us. We are now have a disaggregated curriculum map that allows us to have plug and play, which is what people want. That, you know, not all of them, some of them are really happy with traditional public education, but a lot of them, and seemingly increasingly more with the pandemic, are wanting plug and play. They want to associate at will for portions of your curriculum map. And then how do we cause that transactional data from both your framework systems, your LMSs, your repositories where you stick stuff, right? And the adaptive curriculum world, you know, that has, it's sort of running its own little game universe to learn math or language or whatever, giving, you know, selecting out books for your Lexile level. How do we provide that, converge it into a single utility for student pathways and be able to engineer a quantum leap in analytics? We know Nicole just mentioned Cauthen. That's one of the things that has come out with a quantum leap in analytics. A lot of work to do that. It is going to continue to change because of point one. All the software changes all the time. And also make that solution appealing for all ages as a many-dimensional fulfilling utility, but simple and familiar initially with the universal value proposition. So one of the universal value propositions out there is social media. And that might exist in your walled garden within your learning management system. But once your student matriculates out, they graduate, those records don't necessarily follow them because you have to like shut down their logins. Unless it's in a SuperSphere ecosystem where when the student was affiliated with you, they accumulated records, but when they're no longer affiliated with you, their records remained with them, but they're no longer part of your system. Because that's state law in most of the states. Once you're out, your records might have to be kept for a number of years, but you can't have access. All right, so when we looked at how it would have to work, we said users would create their personal profiles and then they would create their main calendar, which we call calendar with a K because we're building this thing in No Story. So that would be created, and then educators would be able to create a no mix, which is sort of a way to make an Uber step to be dynamic based on one student or set the cohort for 10, arriving to that step, and they would then have that Uberization of the live meeting for time and space, and they'd be able to put in a virtual conference link to be used. Then more advanced logistics that involve creating a pacing calendar for each grade and subject would ride above that. That's only with district and school accounts, where you would do like the complex, you know, put your whole calendar, put all your pacing in. There's a pacing calendar for every subject, every grade. And all of those mirror or layer behind the individual teacher's calendar. So that's a lot more to do, but again, it rides above your existing systems. So when you look at how it would work, you'd have user experience for highly sophisticated rostering, schedule management, and then that pinning of lessons to Uberize those individually. What that means is, if you look at this calendar over here, is finally a way to actually orchestrate by segments, by sections, by rotations, and by blocks. So this is a very flexible way to actually create your calendars. I'm going to ask anybody who wants to ask a question to ask away. Okay, so if we look at overall how the structure would really look to the outside world in terms of what the functions are doing, is over in the social ecosystem No Story, which again, sort of think of it like Facebook combined with Amazon. You have your personal profiles and you do your personal blocks. It has a social media component, a bookmarking component, social badging, standards, the calendar, which is a layered calendar again, and then no mix, which is ability to quickly Uberize the live meets and assign the room at the same time. And then the marketplace. So the marketplace is where all the companies live with all their things that plug in. And then they can even set agent availabilities to Uberize the meetings when you're trying to vet them and you want a meeting with them. or you want to discover some new piece of software that's come out, you can do those automated meetings to your own calendar from their calendars, right, in No Story. But the hybrid logistics interchange really takes effect when the district or school creates their own group. And then they assign and they bring in all their own staff, students, parents as members, different sort of rostering because it's at the social level. And then they set their subjects and they set their pacing units. That's the first layer of the calendar. And then the school works on the second layer, which is segmenting sections, rotations, daily blocks, classes, and then pinning live link. Teachers pin the live link lessons to the calendar with either conditional dates, like you have to pass this person thing, or hard dated things because they're still in the traditional model and they only want to Uberize a little parts of their curriculum map. But that's where the live meets come in. The thing about the integrations is that limited rostering can be done at the social media level. You can't do the full roster because there's social media law that restricts you from being able to do that, which is a good thing for you. So you can keep all that stuff still in your student information system, your learning management system, your single sign-on system, your video conferencing service, and all your apps sit under now this umbrella that connects up to manage time and space. So hopefully this sort of makes sense how this is structured, but it's done intentionally so that everything remains what you've already been using without disrupting that. But now you have this ecosystem to manage your time and space, and you pop on this ecosystem as one of the nodes here in like whatever place you're at. This is you, and there's all these other things also happening separately. The student gets to keep that for life. So the hybrid logistics ultimate is something where you think about changing the use of your space and time. So space and time may mean you go as far as this ultimate, which we talked a little bit about yesterday. You move to houses like Harry Potter World. You know, Harry Potter World, you've got a house Gryffindor and a house Slytherin. You have to sit with your sorting hat and figure out which house you're going to be in as a student. But that might be multi-grade in the smaller schools. And those are study halls. And they might be equipped with a whiteboard, portion of the room, a snack portion for the little kids, a meeting area for the teachers that are coming in and out. Your house leader may also be a teacher or might be a paraprofessional, because they're there just to make sure every student is moving along on what they're supposed to be doing for the day. The student would see how much study time they're supposed to dedicate to every subject. But teachers are roving in and out. And then you'd see students come up to their house leader and say, hey, so we just got pinged to go to a class, so we have to go in 3 minutes. So then they would be roving out to the classroom where the teacher would meet up with them and have that teaching moment or that small group discussion or the lab that they're supposed to be having. And then they all go back to their room. If you can see how this works, what changes phenomenally is the teacher being in the classroom all the time. The teacher is now studying logistics in their own office. Maybe that is a converted classroom, but they're essentially roving. So they're moving more than the students are moving, and they're doing things like noticing one student is way behind in a subject and doing direct instruction with that person to catch them up, or pulling them away from blocks that they were assigned to study another subject and upping the amount of time they're doing on the subject they're behind in because they're ahead in something else. That type of masterful logistics change to fully personalize around that student, keeping pace with what the school wants them to do, isn't possible in the traditional structure. That's where you have to do a lot of tutoring, you have to do a lot of individual education planning, and you still have students who sort of fall through the cracks. They don't really quite make it. But when you move to something that's using this level of algorithms, it changes the whole dynamics of that. And you have sort of a different scenario emerge for how you can really personalize for an individual student. All right, so the hybrid logistics project, who's doing something like this right now? So only manually, because the system is not operable yet. And this is why the EduJedi are insisting we tell everybody about it, because we're still collecting from you as schools and districts the features and benefits that are going to be needed in the structure that we've hypothesized and we are moving forward with building right now. What is really wanted and needed, the minutia. So we've worked with the state of Texas on what their minutia would be. and quite a few other sites so far. All the EduJedi have been weighing in. But this embrace of flexibility is already working for Mountain House High School. They've been an EduJedi Night level winner of our national survey in California, and also Classical Academy in San Diego. And we might be mistakenly missing a couple here, but there's hundreds of charters and private schools who use individually paced workbooks, and always have, like for 50, 60 years. The private schools have been using those because they didn't have enough teachers. So that reality has already existed, it's just never been digital. So that hybrid logistics personalized model uses, it has to use engineering of how you manage that time and space in the digital realm. Because right now, both Mountain House and Classical Academy, they pretty much have divulged, they do this advanced logistics, but they do it in a very manual way, mostly with things like spreadsheets and stickies to all over whiteboards to go who's where and when are we doing this at what time and where are those other kids. And that's just really outdated, and they really want a new system to do this. So that's going to be true of most schools. Like, you can walk into most administrations right now and see giant whiteboards where there's a lot of information about what's where and the schedule and time starts and what teachers in what room, and it's very messy. And when we brought in hybrid learning or simultaneous learning, or also called concurrent, it got even messier. So that's really the reasons behind the hybrid logistics project, and really what we're doing right now. So I'm going to make sure that if you want to ask any questions about this, please pipe up. These are the things I want to go over, which are prohibiting the quick advancement for most districts to move forward with something that would be that ecosystem cap to their other system for managing time and space, a hybrid logistics infrastructure. So the number one thing that's withholding people are their network isn't built to handle that amount of traffic. Because once you get into Uberization, all students and all teachers are in a different construct, and they're going to get pinged on their device or on their phone pretty frequently from anywhere, either with what classroom to maneuver over to in the next 10 minutes, or their link for their conference info so that they can log in. So that kind of traffic is going to exponentially increase the traffic that's in your school now for everything that you're using. And as you can see, model architecture, just from this graphic that I'm showing you and Chris showed earlier, is very advanced. There's a lot of school districts that don't even have a model built. It's just sort of willy-nilly, and they think in terms of, okay, I have devices, I have networks, and I have these big systems, and all those other little apps, I'm trying to keep track of them. That's really hard. So they haven't really built a schema so they can visualize everything they have in their space. And so that's been missing, and that's one of the barriers. Then you also have, of course, I already mentioned the pacing and scheduling. This problem of not having that in an automated layered calendar status makes for a lot of more work. It's actually costing schools and districts an enormous amount of money in teacher time and administrator time. So the question is, are your teachers easily seeing that layered calendar for a school's master schedule, their own time blocks with academic centers stretched across an apparent layer? The fact, this is the second biggest barrier to schools actually thinking with a hybrid logistics infrastructure. The third barrier is the software models tend to mostly be discrete digital. Right now, they're using repository systems. They're not using advanced digital courseware. So since they live in that flat digital world, hybrid logistics is sort of an alien thinking to them, because in their mind, they're distributing from the administration through their army of teachers. They're not distributing direct to the public digitally, and the teachers are arrayed as a service mechanism to that distribution. That's a different way of thinking. So the question becomes, and this is a barrier for a lot of schools and districts, are you digitized or are you truly digital? How are you thinking? And the last one is, are your spaces reworked? So This is from one of our special reports where we talked about all the new types of spaces and what to call them and everything that was happening in space and change. You have, offices for teachers. How are you using your assembly room? Some school districts have chore labs, which, you get to do if you're in the discipline realm, you get to do a chore. There are holds for places for students to cubby for their devices, labs, bubbles for taking phone calls with mom. Those are the new space sort of paradigms, and labeling all your spaces so that they can be labeled in a hybrid logistics infrastructure. This is all stuff that would have to be done, and it's the final sort of barrier to moving and thinking with hybrid logistics. So we want everyone to get involved with this project. Every one of the thousands of interactions that Learning Council, as a news and media research organization, has been having with people has really educated us on what's going on with them internally. What work are they doing? Why are they spending so much time on that? How come they have so many apps? What's going on? But the biggest epiphany for leaders so far that have jumped in and had these discussions with us is realizing they really didn't see the barrier before of how inflexible they are for time and space in most learning, and how that thing alone, that being a manufacturing line and a physical building, is really inhibitive, and it is the systemic inequity that they've been trying to fix. Because as long as you're built to normalize, everybody's got to be in the same path. Everybody's got to be sort of, if they're this age, they got to be in this sort of grade pattern and these subjects, and they got to keep up. That's not the human condition. And people are all different, and they learn differently. And so once you see it, you really see it, and then you say, okay, how can we do this? So the hybrid logistics project is currently, of course, an unpaid thing, but it will eventually have to have some payment once it gets fully going. But right now, anyone who wants to reach out to us, please do, because we want input on how it should function exactly for you. So that goes into the pile for the EduJedi to discuss in the next benefits meeting with our development team. And you can reach out to Doug on that in particular. So those are the main points about the hybrid logistics project. I think I have a couple minutes if we want to have somebody join in, but then I'm going to have show a video and then ask Scholastic to share out any news they have in addition to their video. I think Suzanne is here. So any questions that you have for me, I'm willing to take them now, or unmute you, however you want to do, if you want to raise your hand. If no one does, I'm going to go on to the video. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody pipe up. So I'm going to move on and show you guys the video, and then we'll have a briefing with Scholastic and go from there.
Now, more than ever, educators need tools to meet each student where they are. And students need personalized reading instruction to become confident readers and learn core skills that will put them on a trajectory of success. Together, we can build those skills, layering them one step at a time, working towards literacy at each student's own pace to close gaps across the curriculum. Starting with phonemic awareness and phonics, as students master foundational reading with Scholastic First. Developing vocabulary and background knowledge with Scholastic Word to deepen comprehension and make sense of what they read. And building fluency and stamina with Scholastic Literacy Pro's robust ebook library driven by each student's choices, interests, and levels. Because it's not just about learning to read. It's about reading to learn and loving to read. With digital solutions from Scholastic, you can empower students to grow as readers and become intelligent thinkers of tomorrow. You can monitor and adapt in real time to differentiate and target learning. And you can trust that together we can meet the goals of students, teachers, families, and communities with digital solutions that work.
Okay, I'm back. And I want to make sure we invite a little bit of a dialogue today with Suzanne Lucas. Suzanne, you're here. I think we have to unmute you. Oh, good. Hi, Suzanne.
Hey, LeiLani.
Hey. So this is exciting to be working with you guys at Scholastic because there's so much new stuff happening over there. And just watching your beautiful video, that was awesome. What's happening though is you have developed software that I could see just from some of the screenshots. It's built for those little fat fingers, right? So it doesn't have too many buttons, so you can't poke on everything and get screwed up on your navigation. It's just like, you know, they're big enough and the navigation very simple so that kids just get to the right thing at the right time and they're going there. So tell me a little bit about the design and what's been happening with Scholastic.
Thanks. Yeah. So with those 3 programs that were in that video, we actually did a lot of play testing with kids at various ages to ensure that the user interface that the children were experiencing was appropriate for the early childhood program that's focused on phonemic awareness, the vocabulary program that we worked with Dr. Elfrieda Hebert, who is a vocabulary specialist in California. And that was one of the more fun ones because it's a truly game-based program, which we're really focusing on helping not only helping kids learn how to read, but learn to read with comprehension and understanding, but doing it in a way that's fun and engaging, that provides really robust data to the teacher to help inform that ongoing instruction. And obviously, because we're Scholastic, we needed to make sure we provided books, right? Books for everyone at every level, because we know that every classroom library needs a lot of choice for kids, that it's not just about what level they're reading at, but what they want to read. So that's where Literacy Pro kind of brings it all together. But we actually align all of those programs with some of additional instructional programs that we have to really help teachers make those instructional decisions that, I mean, when I was a first grade teacher, I did all of my assessment one-on-one. It took a lot of time, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And with these programs, we have this really robust teacher dashboard that helps teachers analyze the data in a new way. And, you know, I love what you talked about before this video, because when you're talking about what each kiddo needs, and not every kid is on that same path to proficiency. So sometimes teachers do still need to take small groups, and kids need to be doing something that is instructionally purposeful in that independent time. And these programs help close some of those gaps. I was on another webinar earlier today where we were learning that it wasn't just that it's not really learning loss, but that students have a lack of engagement, and we just need to make sure that we're engaging them in the learning and the why they need to learn it. And so I just feel like that's something that we're really focused on as we move to the next step of Scholastic Education Solutions and thinking about what does our literacy platform need to provide for schools.
Yeah. And I'm imagining that the original idea was, okay, so this is like a lot of districts are going to treat this as supplemental, a lot of teachers. But I know software like yours and other companies in the same space have been seeing this slide into core use, right? So teachers are like, they get into their Seesaw or LMS or whatever, and they're like, for this hour, you're going to log in and you're going to do this much in the Literacy Pro, right? Or whatever. And rather than try to build every single lesson themselves, they're leaning on you a lot more because it's so engaging. Yeah. So have you been seeing this kind of stuff? Because we've been hearing about it.
We have. We hear a lot from our Scholastic Word teachers that their kids don't even want to go to recess, and that they're out of school hours. It's a perfect extension of the school day, but also that it provides them very instructionally supportive programs that personalize the learning for the students while they're doing something else and making that really impactful. So it's embedded in our Scholastic Literacy Core ELA program, but it's also really well aligned to whatever is happening in the classroom. And that's made it really more powerful because teachers can customize some of the programs and they can make recommendations to books. And so we're seeing it being, and honestly, after the pandemic, we've made a lot of changes to Literacy Probe, which started as an independent reading program, filling it with instructional resources at the request of teachers. So it's become this truly blended solution that teachers can use, whether they're in person, hybrid, or remote, and really can be flexible with whatever they're needing at that moment. So it's been a very interesting couple of years for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I think is really interesting is that you have pro designers who've been really working on the UI UX, right, for years.
Yes.
And now all these school districts have jumped in. They're like, oh, we're going to be digital overnight. There's a big freak out for a year and a half. But there's still some that have never experienced what I think of as true digital courseware, which is what you've got going over there. And a lot of the companies do too, right? But once you experience it, it's kind of like you can't go back. Now you've been like, oh, your eyes have been open. You're like, holy cow, I can't build that as a teacher. That's like, what? Pre-test and dishes out the books according to the right level. And it does all these other things. And like, if I had to do all that myself, I'd go nuts. So what are you seeing in that experience in the last year? Like as money came in and as curiosity swept the teacher market, who was overwhelmed already trying to build everything themselves, have you had little stories pop into your radar where people are like, I never knew, holy cow, like when they get in? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they've also never had that level of detail. What we've seen is so much. I mean, there's been such a large adoption of instructional technology in the last 2 years that, I mean, it's been wonderful, and it's not all that teachers need and it's not all that students need, but it is what I think teachers are realizing is that the software helps them with understanding their students. It's very difficult when you do these one-on-one assessments to truly drill down to the specific phonemes that a child is struggling with, right? For example. And yet we have a report that will show you the specific phonemes that a child is struggling with. Yeah. And now the teacher has newer data that it really empowers them to make different choices and group students in a more effective way as they're thinking about where kids need to be and what kids need to be doing. So we have a lot of really wonderful feedback that we're getting out of some of our larger districts that the teachers don't ever want to give it up. I mean, we had one district that was had a different one of our programs, and the district was taking it away, and there was mutiny. And so they called us back and they're like, can you please turn it back on? And we're going to renew right now, because teachers have now embedded these softwares into their curriculum and they don't want to lose them.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing and seeing. And what it really does, because you still have to do your own instruction as a teacher, but it really says, okay, I'm going to get into Seesaw, I'm going to get into my LMS, and I'm going to write the instructions for the day, what has to be being done by the students. But then a lot of times the one of the instruction steps is just log in, right? Here's your link and get into this program from Scholastic or any number. Like there's a lot of other programs out there, but the ease then for the teacher to know that something is competently carrying some of their load gives them back the time to then go around and personalize and spend that extra time with students. So we were talking earlier about that epiphany is ripening nationally. I think you have accounts now that have already had it, because those teachers that were just mutinying, yeah, that's why they mutinied, because it's a huge time saver for them. And then they know they can really help the kids that really need it, especially with all the ELA, right, coming in. Like there's like Salt Lake City has 87 languages they have to manage, and everybody's saying that now. So I really feel like in the next year, we're going to reach that tipping point where more people discover the pro grade kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I hope for your sake. Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be super fun. We love it. You can tell like I'm a coder too, because I love pro grade stuff. I'm like, really? You gave me a PDF. I'm like kind of bored with that. So could I have some real software?
Well, I'll tell you, LeiLani, our next focus is really about co-designing with our teachers, with our students, with our administrators, because we know that we want to keep building programs that actually meet the needs of the classroom and the administrators that are managing these schools. And so that's kind of our next step forward in building out this platform a little bit more robustly, is bringing in the actual user. I mean, we always bring it into the classroom as we're developing. But I think we're going to do it even in a more systematic way. So I'm really excited about what's coming for sure.
We'll get ready, because that's a wild, we're doing that now with the hybrid logistics infrastructure, and it's a wild ride because everybody has like, I wanted to do this. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You just asked for the moon. We're like, yeah. So
we always love to start with the pie in the sky, right? And then see what we really build.
Yeah. It's super fun. Well, so good to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.